gather round. We are at the 37th CALLERLAB Convention in Niagara Falls, New York, and this is the 30th of March of the year 2010. We're most pleased that you have come to this session, which is titled The Social Scene. And the purpose of our discussion is to explore and discuss the importance of sociability in the modern square dance world. We have, in addition to myself, I'm Jim Mayo from New Hampshire. We have on my right Janet Olivieri from Denver, who is the chair of the Partners Committee. And partners, while a caller may indeed be able to call successfully and perform well on stage, a caller who has a partner willing to participate in cultivating the sociability in a square dance club has a considerable advantage over one who doesn't. Because you can talk about it as long as you want, the action's down on the floor. And that's where partners spend much of their time, or at least many of them do, some don't. But that's where it happens. And so partners and our Partners Committee are very important in the discussion about sociability. On my left is Mike Seastrom, who is as venerable in this organization as I am, although not quite so much in life. I've got a few years on him, but in his spare time he's a dentist, and his clubs have been around long enough to have experienced old-style sociability, and he also feels that sociability is an important part of the success of most clubs in today's square dance activity. And I'm going to let Janet start off so that she gets to say all the things she wants to say, and if she says the things we want to say, we'll say, yeah, that's right. Janet, talk to us.
Thank you very much, Janet Olivieri from Denver. I have suggestions. First of all, from the partner's point of view, what I do is I greet people at the door. Mike is setting up all the time. I circulate among the dancers, make sure everybody feels welcome, try to learn their names. I fill in the squares. I don't normally dance at our dances unless I need to fill in. My opinion is the dancers paid to be there. I didn't, and so I will fill in if I need to. And I am the social butterfly. I'm the one that makes sure that if somebody's having a birthday, I'll find out, or an anniversary, or they have a new baby, or they had a death in the family. If somebody's sick, and I always have cards with me so that if something like that happens, we can circulate a card and make sure that card gets out. What all that boils down to is building a relationship with the dancers. And that whether you're a caller or a partner, that's the most important part of this, sociability, is giving the dancers the time to get to know each other, building a relationship, and building a friendship with them. Part of the way that we do that is we have a dance every week. Every Tuesday night we have a dance. Every Tuesday night after that dance, we have an after party. We invite the entire floor to go down the block to the fast food place and have an ice cream. They can come if they want. They don't have to, but they've been invited. And that's where we have the time to sit and visit and to learn about each other. Our club has grown from 1 square to 7. And we have a core group of people that are always there. They will also follow us wherever we happen to be calling. One of the things that we do is we belong to a square dance camping club. Now, you don't have to belong to a camping club, but if you happen to be out in the summertime and you want to go camping, invite your dancers to go camping with you. when you do that, you're not just the caller and the dancer. You are a family. You're living with these people. You are getting involved with games, meals. You may have a dance, a worship service on Sunday morning, crafts. You may go tour someplace, but you're building that relationship and you're building those friendships. Couple things about callers and being a partner I can criticize. I'm a champion of callers and I'm also a critic. If you're helping a new caller, don't get so involved with the new caller that you forget to talk to your dancers. Make sure you're out there visiting with them too. I've seen this happen. It's like, okay, now this is what I did here and this is what I did here, and you forget that the dancers are there too. Make sure that you're going around and you're greeting everyone, either at the beginning of the dance, the end of the dance, the middle of the dance, but you're making that dancer feel welcome. And that extends to CALLERLAB too. Make sure that you're welcoming those first timers, the VIPs, the guests, the people that you don't see all the time. I've built friendships over the last 12 years, and it's real easy for me to go up and talk to somebody that I know. It's not as easy for me to walk up to somebody that I don't know, but I try real hard to make sure that those first timers and those guests and those VIP people are welcome, and I'm glad they're here. Let's see what else I have. Clubs. Make sure you're involved with your club. If it's a caller-run club, we have a caller-run club. We have no officers. We have no dues. The dancers have no obligation. The only thing they have to do is come and have fun. It's truly a caller-run club. If you're in a club-run club, be on a committee, be an officer, be involved with that club too. And when you're at a festival, I saw this when it happened in Denver, when Nationals were in Denver. Some of the callers, and here's my critic again, would call their time slot, and they would disappear, and you couldn't find them. They'd be hiding in the callers' lounge, but they wouldn't be out with the dancers. So it's really important to be seen as well as heard. And I think that's about all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. She certainly tweaks a twinge with me. I am not a naturally sociable being. I know some callers who are so extreme in this regard that they never leave the stage. If I had my druthers, I'd probably be one of those. Or at least I would have before I met Joanne. But I understood that it was part of my responsibility, and I always left the stage. I tried to get there early so I could be at the door and greet people coming in. I left the stage between tips and walked around and talked with people who were sitting on the sidelines. I hated it. It's not a comfortable thing for me, but I absolutely believe it's crucial. And the guy at my left does this instinctively. He loves people. He's the most sociable being, one of the most sociable beings I ever met, and I'm going to let Mike tell you how he does it.
Well, I'll tell you, we all started somewhere, and my initial exposure into square dancing was as a quite young person, and to go and call an adult dance or teach an adult class and be so much younger than the rest of them was a little bit of a challenge for me. So it's a learned skill. It's learned, and it takes time, and you will always make mistakes. There's some that just seem to go so natural, but the key is to persevere and stay with it, and because you will begin to learn people's names, and if names are a tough thing for you to do, as it was tough for me, there are ways to remember people's names, and one of the best ways is to have a memory hook when and that's either an experience with that person that makes you not forget their name, where you can have a visual image of that person and the name and that particular experience. The other way, and they say this in Books and Memory, I actually bought memory books to learn how people memorize and what are the most effective techniques to memorize. And that was not only for the social part of it, but it was as for calling as well. And one of the things that helps out is to imagine when you meet somebody that they might either look like a cartoon caricature or someone very famous. And all of a sudden you can kind of put their name in their face with somebody else that's famous and put a memory hook. It's got to be visual, but you remember things better that way. If you have a spouse, oftentimes you want to introduce or you come up to a couple and you've seen them before at another dance. My Gail and I used to have a thing that if somebody would come up and I couldn't think of their name and you're looking them in the eye and the last thing you want to do is look down at their badge, I would keep looking in their eye and I'd say, I'd like you to introduce them to my wife, Gail. And she would say, oh, Miss, she at the whole time was looking at their badge. And she would say, Jim and Doreen, it's so nice to see you. And I immediately knew it was Jim and Doreen, So get that going with your spouse and work that with each other, because it's just you're helping each other out in a social situation. The last thing you want to be doing is looking at their badge. And how many of you go up and people got their hands over there? Do you remember me? But not from here, that kind of thing. So all of us need those little hooks, and you can find books and tapes and things in the stores that help you to hone your people skills, because so much of what we do is people skills. And it's not only us, but that the clubs that are successful, the clubs that are booming, there are people or dancers in that club or leaders in that club that have a social sense. They're like Pied Pipers. Other people like to be with them. They're doers. They're goers. They're people that make things happen. And when you have those people in your club, whether it's you, the caller, and the partner, or whether it's another couple, sometimes you can play off each other and draw other people into it. And that makes a huge difference in the social interaction and stirring that up in your club. One of the most interesting things, I was traveling to a dance in Texas, and I flew into Dallas, and I had a little bit of a layover from my flight from Los Angeles. So I let off right in front of this TGI Fridays, and I walked in and I sat right up in the bar, and I figured I'd order a quick salad because the tables were all full. And so the bartender handed me a menu, and he said, I'd like to introduce you to Sharon, and Sharon's from Germany. And I said, hi, Sharon, how you doing? How's that salad? Is that a good salad? And she said, oh, yeah, that's great. And he came back and said, what'd you like? I said, I like that salad that Sharon's got. He says, oh, by the way, Mike, because he asked me my name, and he said, what are you doing here in Dallas? I said, well, I'm actually heading to Alabama to do a square dance. And so he says, well, this is Bill over here, and Bill's a salesman. Hey, Bill, Mike's a square dance caller. Well, pretty soon we've got three of us talking across there. And then he goes over to the next person down the way who just sat down, introduces her to Bill, and of course I'm over there, and I say hi, and pretty soon he's got everybody at the bar talking. And it dawned on me that this guy had everybody going because he helped introduce us all and gave us a little something about each other. And you can do that in your club. When you walk in, if there's somebody in your club that you've already talked to and somebody else comes in, even if they already know each other, you can say, oh, did you know so-and-so just has a brand new grandchild? Come on, bring out the picture. And you all of a sudden tie two people together, and you tie two more people together. And pretty soon you give people a thing to talk about. And that kind of social interaction that you create with the people in your club, whether it's the new dancers, whatever it is, creates a sense of fun and sociability. And believe me, you will forget all the dances you called and the places you went and the times you missed the corner or the times you had a great singing call, but you will remember the people and the fun that you had, because I think that's what keeps all of us coming back year after year is the sociability, the fun that we have. I learned something a long, long time ago from Jim. Jim was doing a session and he said he writes everything down. and writes everything down that he does at a dance. I don't know if you do this anymore, Jim, but it was one of the best things I ever learned at a CALLERLAB convention many, many years ago. And Jim said, I write down what I wear. I write down what I call. I write down people's names. I write down the round dance cure. Write down, I like the what I wear. Because just before that CALLERLAB convention, I had been in New Orleans calling, and I had worn the same shirt, unbeknownst to me, 2 years before. And the guy that picked me up from the hotel said, hey, Mike, that's the same shirt you had on 2 years ago. I don't know. I said, how do you remember that, Oscar? And he said, you got more things to do than that. But the bottom line is people remember that. Plus, if you go to a dance sometime and you go, I just saw those guys 3 weeks ago down in Orange County, and you look back at that dance and boom, you got the name right there in your right there on your piece of paper, or somebody's wife, or what was the round dance cure's wife's name? And that is just an immeasurable help. So I thank you, Jim, to this day. I have pages and pages of years gone by, but every once in a while you get hired back to come back and do something 4 years later, and you think, well, I'm not going to wear that same shirt anymore. I'm going to find out what I wore there, or if the shirt's still around, or go back and look at the people that you met and the names that you picked up during that time. It is an incredible help for you to be able to go back in someplace and call and have that information at your beck and call. Even if those people aren't there anymore, you can come back and say, well, what happened to so-and-so? You start learning more things about it. These are the things that help you and help the sociability of our activity. So that's my part about at least the sociability from a standpoint of a caller. Maybe we can look at the sociability from the standpoint of a club or a group. Okay?
That suggestion of writing things down traces back way before me. I got it in 1959 at Kohler's School from Ed Gilmore. And he said, keep records. And one fringe benefit, just to tell you how I do it, I bought a calendar book each year that has a full page for each day. They're hard to find, but they're out there. And I do write down all that he says in addition, the number of people there, the dance program, when I was doing rounds regularly, I used to keep the round dance program as well as the square dance program, the number of people, the amount I got paid, the distance I traveled, and that bound calendar book also makes a document that the IRS will not argue with. It's the best form of record, and I have in my file at home 50 years of them. Wow, yeah, how about that? For a long time I was keeping track of which suit I wore and what color shirt. I had a collection of Mayo Indian vests and also some fancy ones that my sister made for me, and I wore vests very regularly, and so I kept a record of which vest I had worn to that dance. For the clubs I call for regularly, it also keeps me from repeating. Lets me work a singing call schedule. That's all technical stuff. Let's go back to sociability. As I said, I'm not a naturally sociable being, and for a long time I was working a full-time job and calling 6 nights a week, and I didn't have much time to pay attention to anything, let alone people. I did kind of enjoy knowing the people that we met in our clubs and working with them and all that sort of thing, but I wasn't a comfortable, sociable person. And the more square dancing got complicated, the more intrigued and involved I became with choreography, and I started out with one club, and then I stopped being able to teach classes for them because I had acquired 3 more clubs, and the more I spread myself thin, the less involved I became with the people. I have aged some since then, and one of the wisdoms that I have gained in my senior years is that the only really important thing is people and the friends that you make. The most valuable thing that square dancing has given to me is the worldwide collection of friends, many of them from right here, but also some very close friends that we have met in our clubs that are still good friends. And as I look back, one of the things that all our clubs have is executive committees. And they gather once a month and plan the program, and they talk about what the club's going to do. And I found myself wondering, particularly after I started running a Call or Run club, and Joanne could do all of that in about a half an hour a month. I wonder, why do these people get together and spend all that time? Isn't it enough that they just come to the dance? The answer is they come to the executive committee meetings once a month because they enjoy each other's company. Because getting together and sharing a cup of coffee and a cake is fun. And they talk with each other about their kids and how their lives are going. And that, I finally discovered, is a really important part, maybe the most important part, way more important than choreography. It's a hard lesson because I keep thinking they come because I'm a great singer or I have better choreography or my dances are smoother. Not true. They come because they enjoy each other's company. And sociability today is harder to come by than it used to be. The tweets aren't really quite the same feeling as shaking a hand or putting an arm around somebody. Sociability is a very important thing. I'm disappointed that modern square dancing, and we CALLERLAB in particular, have taken so long to begin to be aware of that fact. One of the handouts that you have is the Caller Training Guidelines item on sociability. Caller Training Guidelines were developed when CALLERLAB first began back in the mid-'70s, and we decided on all of the subjects that should be taught to callers in caller school. And we came up with a list of 21 subjects that were important. And we published a book. I was chairman of the Caller Training Committee for a while, and we wrote a 180-page book with outlines of each topic that we should cover. And nowhere in that book is sociability mentioned. Last year, at the Caller Training Committee meeting, they said, gee, we think sociability is an important part of square dancing. Maybe we should include it in our caller training guidelines. And they sent me off to write the outline for caller training on that subject. I'm embarrassed that it has taken us 37 years to discover that sociability is an important part of what we're doing. We have succeeded for the first time in including on the CALLERLAB convention schedule a meeting about sociability. That's embarrassing. And I'm pleased that we now have it on the schedule. I'm pleased that so many of you have come to share in our discussion of it. And while we have had opening remarks, we would like also to hear from you any suggestions you have, any observations. If you don't agree, that's fine. If you do agree and you have some other suggestions for how one might develop and encourage sociability, because I think that modern square dancing particularly is a club-based activity. And the club has been the source of our strength for as long as we've had modern square dancing. It's one of the things that distinguishes us from the traditional form of square dancing. But if you have ideas about how your club can be more effective in promoting sociability, we would love to hear from you. And before you tell us your thoughts, tell us who you are and where you're from. Switch all the way up. All the way up.
Test.
There you go.
I'm Sally Ann. I'm from Massachusetts. First of all, I'm absolutely flabbergasted, Jim, that you were ever tongue-tied.
Not tongue-tied, they're scared.
They're scared. It's just, Jim knows my husband and I. He's always been very friendly to me, so I thank him for that. I do have a question, though. Don has two clubs, both in New Hampshire. One is 30 miles from each other. One is very social, has a good cash flow, does a lot of things together. The other one we actually did go to an executive committee meeting, and it was the same people. It lasted for about 10 seconds, and they have very little money, and people don't stay in the club, and yet we don't know what we can do to change it. So I just was wondering if you could give us some suggestions as to how to get the one club a little bit more social.
Can you merge them? Janet, you have some thoughts on?
They don't even go. They don't travel. That's the other thing. The one in Keene does not travel at all. And I think that's part of the problem. But, we're not a caller-run club, as you know, so we cannot really push it that far. We can encourage.
I don't grant that position. Clubs have gotten control over their organization. We've had a long fight in the past between club leaderships who've broken off and formed new clubs and done battle with each other. None of that says to me the caller cannot be involved. Much of the time, the caller has become uninvolved because they didn't want to invest the time. I think that whether you have an official position or not, partners particularly have an opportunity to talk with the club leadership on the sidelines during the dance, wherever you meet them. And if you are conscious of the fact that sociability is an important function of a group, then you can do a lot to drop hints, make suggestions, and I'm not guaranteeing instant success, but that's certainly one of the things that particularly a partner can do down on the floor. Mike, you want?
A couple of the questions I'd make. If your group does not travel, do they hold a dance, and do they have a theme for their dance? Do they make their dance like a party?
Yes and no. They do Christmas, which Don does.
Right.
But again, they don't seem very welcoming to have me join in to do anything.
Okay.
I feel a little excluded.
Right. I think sometimes it's really important as a caller and a leader to express your concern. You'd go into a board meeting and you'd say, we're concerned about this club, about the viability of this club, and would you be open to some suggestions? They can say yes or they can say no. And sometimes when they say no, it's they don't want you to help, and there's nothing you can do to save them. Sometimes the apathy and the inner clicking of the social group in the club doesn't want to bring in new people, and there's almost nothing you can do to bring that out if they're not willing to.
Thank you.
I know that I had a similar situation. I was teaching a class. We had a lot of new dancers, and the new dancers were here, and the club was over here around tables talking and having coffee and maybe in the kitchen, and I could not get them to mix. I asked the president if I could go to the board meeting, and I appealed to them. I said, the new dancers are here. I drew a diagram of the hall. The new dancers are here. The club is here. And how can these new dancers be even interested in joining or becoming a part of this club if they're being excluded from the get-go? And so it's really important, I think, for any event to not only be like a party, to almost be like a celebration, but to have a welcoming committee, or at least a couple or two welcoming those people as they walk through the door as if they were guests in their own home. In other words, if you had a party in your own home, a Christmas party, and you had family coming, you had neighbors and friends, you'd be welcoming them, be shaking their hand, taking their coats, and just making them feel welcome from the time they get in the door. Some clubs assign people to do that. Other clubs just automatically do that. And it can be every member of the club can be involved if they have the mentality that these are guests. And for most clubs these days, it's the guests that make their dance a big dance. So if they have something special, many clubs will have a pie night, or some clubs are known for their refreshments, and people will come and come to that club because they know they're going to get a great dessert, or this club eats dinner at their dance, and they'll come and do that same kind of thing.
Let me note that same club I'm going to call dance foreman April, but they dance in a very big hall. It's an old. It's a huge hall, and the arrangement is such that you get 3 squares dancing in this gigantic arena. One thought that occurs to me is if they put a row of chairs across the middle of the hall to try to keep people up there, put the refreshment table up there, just physically rearrange the space. I know that hall, and it's not uncommon. A lot of clubs dance in spaces that are much too big for them. One of the interesting things that happened in one of my clubs once, we were packed into a small hall. We had 9 squares dancing in a 6-square hall. And they decided, well, let's move to the high school. It's got a much bigger hall. And we went into a gymnasium that was way too big. And the club dropped down to 3 squares within the first 6 months. The space makes a difference. Just another thought. We had a further comment.
Chris had one first.
Go.
I have many, so I'll just reel them off. It's the easiest way. Our club, Dave from England, our club is 70 miles away from our home. We go twice a week. And it's in a rural area, and we really are into the area itself. All the people know each other because they come from different villages, and they all interact because there's quite a big social scene. So it's great because we let the members say, well, announce what events are on, and we'll stay over and we'll participate. In the village, we'll do a Christmas fair and we'll have a stall, and it'll be Trevor and I with friends helping. We let them they do theatre trips, walks. We have a charity once.
You're hearing all of these are good suggestions for what you can do with your club to increase your sociability.
We have a charity we pick once a year, and we have different ways of raising money. We didn't suggest it, but the club suggested that they had produce like tomatoes, apples, whatever. Flowers. They bring them and sell them for a few pence. And they're gone. People are queuing up. We didn't suggest it. They suggested it as a money making. So we really interact, even though we're miles away, and we have a good time.
The other thing, Trevor Day from England, is that with that particular club, the numbers were dropping slightly because we'd always danced on the same night. We had the usual recruitment problem is that you're dipping into an ever-decreasing pot if you keep on the same night. So we started up a new dancer group on a totally different night. And we had over 70 dancers through the door. So that was very good for us. And we took the time to meet with all of those dancers at the end of the dance. Okay, it means that we don't get home till 1 o'clock in the morning.
And the rest.
But it's a much more social group. On there are dancers who come to both nights on there, and they say, why don't we get the atmosphere that we have on a Monday night, on a Friday night? And it's all to do with that sociability on there. Chris collects the money that is on there, takes the sweets round that is on there. So it greets and we meet everybody. Because of the amount of time which we have, because of the journey beforehand on there, I don't always get to greet everybody because I'm setting up equipment and everything on there, but I do try and get round during the evening to meet everyone.
After parties are part of the job.
And we have a break midway through. We don't have continuous refreshments. Therefore, they say, 9:15, quarter of an hour break. We have all the notices and whatever, and they can go and talk to their friends and whatever. Try it.
Keith Ferguson, Saratoga, California. I think I'm a little bit like you, Jim. I love talking to people, but I'm very nervous meeting new people. It's a little bit like pulling teeth. Sorry, Mike. Couldn't resist. But our club used to always have a big group that went out. It's a dancer-run club, but go out to the pizza parlor afterwards. And one of the problems nowadays is pizza parlors close earlier, and the club is in a new location. There's no place really nearby. But my wife, Meg, got an idea, and I kind of wanted to give her credit for this, that at CALLERLAB, a number of years ago at one of the sessions, they talked about the importance, particularly with classes, of getting some sociability into the class. So we have our class on a different night of the week than the club. And we get good support from angels, but trying to get the class to socialize is important. And this year, she did some of this last year, but this year one thing she did recently, fairly early in our class season, which starts in January for us, she had a get acquainted night. And we told the club members, if you can only come, many of them do come as angels, but some have other obligations. If you can only come one night all year, come this one. And then ahead of time, she had the club members and class members fill out a sheet where they listed a few of their interests or their occupations. And she published this not with their names, but she had a list of all the different interests of the club members and another one, a green sheet for the class members. And on Get Acquainted Night, those were there. And then she had some little games that we played. Now, my first reaction a couple of years ago was, this is taking away my teaching time. So what? It's important. You'll keep the people. So one of the games, for example, she had people go out during the break and try to find, somebody that was a gardener and somebody that was an avid book reader and somebody that was a raiser of carnivorous plants. Yes, we had two of them. We didn't know we had two. We knew we had one, but they met each other. They wouldn't have met each other otherwise. And then for one of the tips, she had 6 volunteers, one of each. She knew ahead of time kind of what the categories were, so she had made up signs, and she got one volunteer to hold up a sign saying gardeners, another one saying outdoor sports, another one indoor sports, and they went to different parts of the room. We said, square up. If you're a gardener, square up in this square. If that square is full, well, then you could also fit into outdoor activities, go there. And we weren't sure this would work. She was really nervous about it, but it worked beautifully, and that way you got these people together, and they got to talking. Yes, it took from class time, but so what?
One of the things that I skipped over in my notes was classes. What we currently have is, we started a class in September, and we had 12 high school and college students. And our classes are Sunday night, 3 hours long, and we stop halfway through and give them dinner. The club provides the dinner. We stop for half an hour. These people are talking. They are sitting on the floor, they're sitting on the chairs, they're eating, they're sharing a meal, they're getting to know each other. I'm thinking high school, college students, they're not going to be back. January, we started another class. They were back with their friends. We had 35 people. We do the same thing. No one has dropped out. They've all joined the club.
I just want to share...
Identify yourself, please.
Sorry. Yes, Wendy Vandermeulen from Ottawa, Canada. Our club is one of the biggest in the associations and some of the things in the local association. And just some of the things that we do, I teach the new dancers in one hall. My husband has mainstream in the other hall. So we're separate for 45 minutes, and we have a 15-minute coffee break, and then they dance together. So they get a chance to know each other. We always serve, there's a 15-minute break, there's always coffee and cookies, so people always have a chance to sit around and chat. Once a month we have a party. So there's no teaching, it's a relaxed evening, everybody's together. We encourage them to, as soon as the music goes on, it says, all right, square up, and we don't want to see any square that does not have a new dancer in it. Make it 2 or 3, try to get them mixed up. And then, of course, we always have food, so we quit dancing. Instead of taking a 15-minute break, we quit about a half an hour early, and then we sit down for a half an hour, and we have food, and we sit and chat. We have tremendous Christmas party and wind-up party at the end of the year that's a catered buffet thing, and then we have entertainment. The people have to entertain. We want volunteers. We'll do a line dance. We'll do a square dance. It's very, very sociable. And then one other thing that we do is the last few years for our graduation ceremony at the end of the year, the graduates have to entertain the rest of the group. So they are forced to, up until now they've been learning to square dance together, so they've always been together. But now they have to come up with something totally, it may or may not be related to square dancing, but they really, really have to interact and work together. And the friendships that come out of that are they're amazing. And the last year, for the first time, last year we graduated 14 people, and every single one of them came back for the second year of dancing. That's the first time it's happened in the club. And this year we have a few more new people, and we're just sort of really excited about that. But those are a few different things that we do that really seem to work to keep the club together.
I know a bunch of callers who are really offended by taking a refreshment break in the middle of the evening because it interferes with their program. We need to get over that. We really do. Because long after the choreography is worn off, the friendships will remain. And if you let them grow, they will maintain your club. Anybody else got a contribution or suggestion?
Mike Olivieri, Denver, on the other hand, we've had 2 clubs in Denver that have folded because the members no longer wanted to dance. When they had their club dances, the club members would socialize, and the guests were the ones who danced. And it finally got to the point of, why are we showing up to do all this work and let other people dance? They folded the club, but they still meet every month at one of the members' houses and have a social event. So the club is still there, it's not a square dance club anymore.
Anybody else got a contribution? Stop on the way over, give him a chance.
Yeah. I'm Gene Record from Cold Spring, Kentucky, and I can associate with almost all of these things. I have several different clubs. I have dancer-run clubs and a couple of caller-run clubs, and almost everything that you're mentioning here we've gone through with over the years. One of the things that I'd like to get away from just a moment, if you don't mind, is this fact about doing things like picnicking and golf outings and other things besides the square dancing. You know, I think you've brought it out, but mostly in connection with the club. It's that night itself. But I think your camping thing that you mentioned, camping weekends and things, and even just outside activities away from the club that you're dealing with. But I know clubs that you mentioned there, they don't dance anymore. They quit dancing mostly because they got a little too old, and they weren't bringing any new people. So they aren't a square dance club anymore. But these friends that they made, they go out to a month and meet, you know, and I find another thing too is maybe it's always been that way, but maybe more accentuated now in our time, that the very first night that people come into square dance, our classes, they begin to meet each other and talk with each other, and I think that's a sign of our times, maybe, that we're not as social as we used to be. We're in our little computer, television, work world, and we don't make friends. We're not acquainted. And so when we get out and all of a sudden we're in this thing like square dance classes, okay, here's a whole bunch of new people I'm meeting. And by the time that class is, we start in September and we're getting close to graduation, they're really becoming friends and talking about taking trips together and things like that. So I think that's another advantage that square dancing has, that maybe...
I think exactly that point, that we used to get more opportunity for social interaction than society provides today. But I don't think that in any way says that we don't still want it.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have an opportunity to provide a unique social opportunity, or social experience in today's society. Let us not abandon it. Let's go with it. Another anecdote, we had a club in our area that was a very successful club. And I used to hate to call for them because they danced in a church, and they had two halls. And the dance took place in this one, and in the outside one there were sofas and chairs.
Uh-huh.
And
I had that.
Any evening that I was there, there'd be 10 squares at the dance, only 5 of them in where I was putting on my show.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really bent out of shape over that. You guys hired me. The least you do is come in and dance.
Yeah.
They survived long after lots of other clubs in our area had folded and gone away. This club was still going, and in fact, they're now too old, many of them, to dance, but they're still a solid core group of friends in Naples, Florida.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I live in New England.
Yeah. Well, I had the same situation. I called for the club regularly. In fact, I've been calling for this club for 37 years. But they, at one point, got a school that they could dance in the gym, but they weren't allowed to bring food in the gym. But they were noted for their good meals and food, and they would have to go to the cafeteria, which was across the hall. And the problem was, after the tip was over, they'd go over there, and so finally I got a little timer, and I set 10 minutes, and when that went off, you guys got to come back over here and dance, because they would be socializing so much, they would say, oh, well, hard to get them back. But anyway, the point I wanted to make, I guess, was that other things outside of the club itself, golf outings, taking the club on a mystery trip, not knowing where you're going, but somebody sets up another dance in another area, but nobody knows they're going there. They just all sign up and go. But that's just those things outside of the regular club dance. Other activities.
Also help to build the sociability in your group.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Certainly true.
Well, one of the groups.
Any other contributions?
Yes. Chris from England. We have a lot of parties. You've got all your events, your Saints' Days and special days, and encourage the club to bring food and dress up and have a ball, really. We do this all the time, and we get people from all over the country come because they know it's so great. We have fantastic coloured newsletter that Trevor prints off with all people's photographs, and we encourage all the club members to write articles for that event, even the new ones. That was quite good. We actually go out with the club when there's events on and dance with them. We don't dance together, we dance with the other dancers, so they think we're human. Even Trevor, if he's on the stage, he can dance sometimes, and they laugh when he can't, makes mistakes. And one weekend, it was at the club in Manchester many years ago, we had on July the 4th party, and for that we had strawberries and cream, or ice cream, and a ham salad. So what do we say to the club members? This would be a Saturday, so we said to the club members, Wednesday, Thursday, hey, let's all go strawberry picking. And we had a fantastic time. It was good.
Sociability is a crucial part of the success of our activity.
And also the more people that you can get involved. Some of these social activities you'll recognize in a club, in a group that you may be affiliated with, that you can't get certain people to participate in certain social activities. It's just not their thing and they're not interested, but there are other things you can do. And so look for those things that tie in different people. If you find that there are several couples that just are not interested, find out what their hobbies are, what they do with their spare time. You can always somebody says, well, we just go out and go to the farmers markets on a Sunday morning or something like that. Say, well, let's have a club outing to the farmer market. Let everybody meet down there. We'll go down to the farmers market and hey, we can even bring our little boom box and we'll dance a little bit or something. Try to think outside the box a little bit to tie in the people in your club that aren't quite up with that. Some you'll never get to, that's not their thing. They come and they dance and they go home. But for most of your clubs, you're going to find that the more you can involve those people that you can't quite get in, the better off you are. Sometimes the events at the dances are fun. I always find that the men's cake bake is excellent, or men's cookie bake, where men have to make the cookies or the cake that night. And there's chili night. All right, the guys have a chili cook-off, or those kind of things are fun. And particularly when you make sure it's the guy that's we've had some amazing cakes and we judge them, and then the gals do the taste test, and you make a big deal out of it. It's just something different that ties in people that aren't as involved. You just see people come out you can auction off the cakes at the end and that kind of thing. It's fun. So think outside the box a little bit. And we actually have one club in our area that they have a black light dance, and they have white gloves for everybody that comes to the dance. And those are those white garden gloves or white gloves, and anyway, and then they put black lights all around the hall, and they'll have a black light tip where they turn off the lights, almost all the lights off, and everybody, all you can see is people's hands. All you can see is the hands. And it's fabulous. Some of the things you can do with those hands in a big circle in a right and left grand. And, and it's the cutest thing. And it's fun. It's just something a little bit different, So this caller carries around a big, duffel bag full of, laundered gloves and brings them to the dance along with all these black lights. And there are just fun type of events that you can hold at your club that are just, bring the people in and do it at your class as well. Have food. People and food and square dancing mix so well. And so have those kind of things at your dance. And you'll stir up people. People will congregate around the food. And that suggestion about having a smaller hall works fabulously. Sometimes bringing chairs in or putting tables where just a few people can sit at a table around the hall, because gives you a chance to walk around and talk with people, and people are more apt to, in a closer quarters, are more apt to feel more like that there's something going on that they need to be involved in.
Okay, Trevor.
Yep, we had this situation where we moved from...
You are Trevor, right?
I'm Trevor, yes, from England. We had the situation where we were in a very large hall. When we moved into there, the part of the building was being rebuilt, so all of the storerooms weren't available, so most of the stuff was stored in the back of the main hall on there, and they had movable screens that were across the front. Now the hall's finished, the screens are still available. Because we don't need the whole room on there, that screen we put across about 2/3 of the way down the hall. And it's quite interesting because we've used that hall for a number of years. When we have a large dance in there, we have tables and chairs down the side. We dance 2 squares wide by 4 or 5 deep. And for the class situation on there, we're normally talking about 6 squares on there. So we bring the screen well forward, and I attempt to try and get them to dance 3 squares wide by 2 deep, which they won't do. And they suddenly decide, they've not got enough space on there. So one week in the interval on there, they moved the screen back an extra 3 feet. And all that happened is I had an extra 3 feet between me and the front square. They didn't have any more space for dancing.
One of the messages I hope will come out of this session is that I believe we've become so technical in our approach to square dancing that we have forgotten the importance of sociability, that we have gotten concentrated on making it more complicated to be sure we get things taught fast enough and that we introduce new choreography. And in that environment, our attitude has been, as exhibited by the fact that we don't spend any time teaching callers about it, that we just have not realized that our most important product is not technical square dancing. It is sociability. Yeah. And you got another way to tell us about how to make it work.
Well, when Mike mentioned the...
Identify yourself again.
Yeah, Gene Record. When Mike mentioned the black light dance, you might use this sometime. We did it this New Year's Eve. And this lady came to me and had this idea, and I thought, I don't know, but she insisted. Well, what we did, everybody that came in the dance that night got the name of a movie star, from Greta Garbo to Clark Gable to Brad Pitts and all those, and everybody got the name of a movie star. They were that person that night. And as the dance went on, there were several prizes to give away, and we would say instead of... and now the award goes to, Brad Pitts, and whoever Brad Pitts came up and got, we had a little Oscars with the basket that they won, and everybody just, when it was over, comments over that. We're still hearing comments about that dance, it was really something.
And the executive committee had a wonderful time at their meeting making the Oscars, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but I'm sure. Yeah. But anyway, that was just an idea you might think of.
Keith? We got one back there? Good. Oh,
Sally Ann. I'm originally from England, and I just wanted to tell you that we went to England. We went to a big dance in Bristol, and in the middle of the dance, they stopped the dance and they put these little card tables up, and everybody brought their own food, and it was a big potluck, and it was... Of course, Don was a visiting caller, so that everybody kept insisting that he try this, try that, whether it was Jamaican patties, sausage rolls, anything. But it was really, we'd never had that, and it was very fun to do. And then they just put all the tables away again and had the dance continue. And it was so. Is it important to have the caller on a stage? Because this venue has a stage, but they don't use it. When I go, I ask them to put it up. But the last time we went was actually right after we got back from England, and I was like, they haven't done it. I'm not going to make a fuss. Just let it go. But they have callers from all over, and they don't put the stage up, whereas other places have homemade stages, bring them right into the floor, put it all up together, and they put the caller on the stage. Now, how important is it to have them on a stage?
My personal view is I'd rather be on the floor. If it's a big crowd and I need to be on the stage to see the entire floor, then by all means. But in Keene, I'd much prefer to be on the floor so that I can make them feel that I'm with them, that I'm part of them. I want to be as inclusive as I can be. I know callers, and we've in caller school we train very actively. I know callers. Jay King, for instance, never dared to get anywhere near the people. He always set up the table in front of himself. Long before we were reading off of computers, Jay King watched the floor, but he always had a safety barrier between himself and any of those people. I prefer to be on the floor unless the crowd is so big that I can't.
That's the problem. You need to be up there.
Yeah, sometimes you need to be up there.
And sometimes it's an advantage to be up there because you can see people in the back that are dancing in the back, and it gives you a chance to catch the dancers doing things, and I say the smaller the group is and the more intimate the group is, it's better if you have a stage, get off the stage and be right there with them. Because if it's only a couple squares, you can be right with the squares. You can be walking out with them and talking with them and be right there. But if you have a bigger dance and you have a little bit of difficulty seeing the people in the back, it's a little bit tougher to interact with them on the stage and to talk to people's name and to catch them doing things. And sometimes Sally just saves Bill because he missed his corner or he was supposed to swing her and promenade and he's looking around and there she's good catch, Sally, and it ties you to the group as well. So there's advantages in both situations. But I would say with the bigger the crowd, yeah, it's great to have a stage. The smaller the crowd, you should be right there.
I had a question. Any suggestions from anybody, you or anybody, as to how to avoid cliques? The club I call for, I don't think ever had a problem with this until, fairly recently, but we have several couples, and admittedly they are slightly younger, not a lot younger than some of the others, which may be the reason, that they come together, they dance in the same square together most of the time. When they go out to a Saturday dance or a weekend festival, they square up always together. When they did come to the Get Acquainted night when we encouraged them, I was so happy to see them there. Over in the corner, and when we told everybody else go out and meet people, they stayed over with their friends in the corner and just talked. Any suggestions on how a nice way to avoid this, or should we even worry about it?
Wendy from Ottawa again. 4 ladies chain 3/4, heads promenade into another square.
A lot of times they're not even dancing, they're standing on the side talking. I was going to say a lot of the times they just stand on the side and talk and don't dance all that much. But yes, that is an idea. Thank you.
In the club I called for, I ran across this on a couple of occasions, and I just went and personally talked to them. And they said, well, we like dancing together. And a lot of times because they're good dancers, they know each other, they socialize together. And I said, that's great. Pick a couple tips in a night. As if the club, and other clubs do this regularly, they have they call it a social tip or a mixer tip or whatever, and everybody from the club gets a guest. And we announce this ahead of time as the caller. We'll go ahead of time and say, listen, the next tip, all the club members, ask a guest to dance, and we'll try to get that kind of thing where the caller, with the club and the guests mix up. Some clubs use computers. Well, we're going to make a computer tip here and there. it is tough, and sometimes those people would rather go elsewhere and dance elsewhere than because they want to dance together. But it's not really helping your club, and in the long run, it's not very social.
Go ahead. I'm Barbara from Ottawa, and I'm a fairly new dancer. I graduated last April with a group of people, and we tend to gravitate toward each other when we go to the dances still. And there's a few in our group that don't have a whole lot of confidence, shall we say, and they feel so much more comfortable. And they'll beg me, oh, please come and dance in our square, because to them it doesn't break down. I think that'll all change as we gain experience, but I didn't know if your people were new dancers, because I think that could be, at least for us, that's what I had, the experience that I have.
Okay, I wanted to change the subject and talk a little bit about showmanship, because if you really want to get your dancers talking among themselves, you got to put on a show. And I am going to embarrass Mike so bad, because we do theme dances, and at Easter, Mike has worn bunny ears and a bunny tail. People are talking. We did a Mardi Gras dance. You hand out beads, they want to trade them. It's like, well, I didn't get any silver beads. Well, I didn't get any gold beads. We do an Irish theme, and we'll start with the tip just in his regular color clothes, and by the time he gets done with that dance, because he's adding one thing every tip, he's got a red beard and a hat and a vest and sunglasses, and he makes people talk. It's like, you know what he's doing? And people will show up at our dance just to see what he's going to do, but they will talk during the dance, and they'll talk to anybody who'll listen.
Usually I'll do everything except find the corner.
A good theme is a hat dance. And everybody comes with their own hat, and I have done several of these with a whole set of hats. I have a different hat for each tip, and that's another theme that you can use. And
make the song match the hat. Railroad hat.
Right.
Hard hat for like 16 tons.
Yep.
You know.
Good theme. We're getting some really good ideas here of things that can be done. The bottom line message that I still want to emphasize is that we have gotten too dedicated to technology and technical dancing, and too little concerned with the fact that the most important product we have to offer is sociability. The computer tips are very common in the advanced group because they want to be sure that they equalize the technical skills of the floor and all that kind of stuff, and prevent the best dancers from dancing together all the time. One of the things I used to do regularly in teaching a class was to talk to them about clicks. Let's not keep it under the carpet. Clicks exist. And what I really want to encourage clicks, I want them to be 5-couple clicks, at least. And I, in fact, succeeded in building some 5-couple clicks. They get an extra person in there, and they were pretty nice people, and they'd add them to the set, and then one of them has always got to be off dancing with somebody else. The most unbreakable click that I ever encountered is the one that Joanne learned to dance in. When she was in my class, she was tough. You could break that click apart and they would reform in a heartbeat, no matter what I did. And she still is a pretty sociable being, and has taught me a lot about sociability. But boy, was her click tight. Anything else? We're running down to the wire here. Love to have any additional comments. If we don't have any, I'm not opposed to the idea that we should head over early for a break, but we'd love to have any additional thoughts.
I just have, this is Susan Morris from Washington. The one thing I did in our area, clubs are all guest callers, so I just teach a class, and I'm not necessarily there for the dances, though we do try to go to as many as we can of the club dances. I have sent during lessons, I got everybody's email address and sent out a weekly newsletter, email newsletter, telling them, we missed you if they were gone. We had fun doing this. It was great to see so-and-so back after vacation. And then a brief definition of what we learned last week and what I expected to teach the next week.
Great idea.
That's not only good in the class environment, but in the club environment. You should have a sunshine officer that's in your club that either sends out cards and get wells and things from the club, but lets everybody else know so that they can touch base with those people. And if for some reason you haven't seen somebody in a couple weeks, you just send them a note or send them an email or call them or find out what's going on. I also am a real strong believer that if you have new dancers, every new dancer couple or person, depending on the type of club you have, should have a mentor or a sponsor or that kind of person, that couple that can be there and call them and say, hey, come on, we're going to go on the visitation. Why don't we ride together and share a ride, or let's go out afterwards and do something. It's that kind of thing that ties them to the club and makes them more a part of the club, so that you don't get dancers going off by themselves. And you as callers can help be the glue here. You can go around and make sure somebody has somebody to talk to and introduce people to each other, as I said previously.
I'm going to follow on the same theme, that if people say, oh, we're going on holiday or whatever, or an operation or whatever they're going to do, we say, don't not drop out. We will find you a dance buddy, and they will be with them for a few weeks, and they're back into it. And then they come back. They're quite happy. They know who they're with, and great.
And they feel wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, how we doing? I have no problem at all with deciding that we've had a very successful gathering. I very much appreciate the contributions from all of you. I think we've got some excellent suggestions. I think the tape will be a very important one in the collection from this year's convention. I thank you all for being here and look forward to seeing you all at dinner. Thank you to Janet. Thank you to Mike.